The desperate proposition. The rain drummed against the windows of Chen Gallery like impatient fingers, each drop echoing the rhythm of Violet's racing heart. She stood among her paintings, vibrant landscapes and abstract emotions captured in oil and canvas, knowing this might be the last time she'd see them displayed in her own space. The foreclosure notice crumpled in her trembling hand told the story she'd been dreading for months. "Violet, sweetheart, you don't have to do this." Her father's weak voice drifted from the back office, where he sat surrounded by pill bottles and medical bills that towered like paper monuments to their financial ruin. Theodore Chen had once been a proud man, a respected professor whose quick wit and gentle humor had filled their small apartment with warmth. Now cancer was stealing him piece by piece, and the treatments that might save him were bankrupting them both. "Papa, we've been through this." Violet forced brightness into her voice as she approached his wheelchair. "The gallery is just a building. Your life is everything." But even as she spoke the words, her heart shattered a little more. This gallery wasn't just a business. It was her dream made manifest, every brushstroke on these walls a piece of her soul. She'd opened it 5 years ago, with her modest inheritance from her mother, determined to create a space where art could breathe and visitors could lose themselves in beauty. Now medical bills and her father's experimental treatments had consumed their savings, their hope, and nearly their time. The chime above the gallery door sang its familiar welcome, startling them both. Violet looked up to see a figure silhouetted against the stormy afternoon, tall, impeccably dressed, with an umbrella that hadn't dripped a single drop onto her carefully maintained hardwood floors. Everything about the stranger suggested wealth and power, from his tailored charcoal coat to the confident way he moved through her space, studying her paintings with intense dark eyes. "We're closed," Violet said, though something about this man made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Miss Chen." His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "I'm Marcus Blackwood. I believe you know my company." Violet's breath caught. Everyone knew Blackwood Technologies, the innovative firm that had revolutionized digital communication and made its enigmatic founder one of the youngest billionaires in the country. But why was Marcus Blackwood standing in her failing gallery, studying her work with such concentrated attention? "Your paintings are extraordinary," he continued, pausing before her latest piece, a turbulent seascape that seemed to capture every emotion she'd felt over the past year. Raw, honest, they speak to something most people spend their entire lives trying to hide. "Thank you." Violet's voice came out smaller than she intended. "But if you're looking to buy something, I should warn you that everything here will be auctioned next week to pay debts." Marcus turned then, and Violet found herself caught in the full force of his attention. He was younger than she'd expected from the magazine photos, perhaps 35, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to see everything while revealing nothing. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like standing too close to a cliff. "Edge, I'm not here to buy your art, Miss Chen. I'm here to buy your cooperation." He reached into his coat and withdrew an envelope thick with documents. "I have a proposition that would solve all your financial problems and ensure your father receives the best medical care money can buy." Violet's hands shook as she accepted the envelope. "I don't understand." "It's quite simple, really." Marcus moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something indefinably masculine. "I need a wife. Not for love or companionship, but for business. My board of directors has concerns about my stability, my commitment to long-term planning. A marriage would reassure them, secure a merger I've been working toward for 3 years. The words hit Violet like physical blows. "You want me to marry you for 18 months. In exchange, I'll pay off all your debts, purchase your gallery, and lease it back to you for $1 a year. and ensure your father has access to any treatment he needs anywhere in the world." Marcus's expression remained perfectly neutral, as if he were discussing stock prices rather than her entire future. "The contract includes a payment of $5 million upon successful completion of our arrangement." Violet stared at the papers in her hands, the legal language swimming before her eyes. $5 million, her father's life, her gallery saved. All she had to do was pretend to love a stranger for 18 months. "Why me?" she whispered. Marcus smiled then, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Because you need what I'm offering desperately enough to say yes. And because you're not part of my world, there will be no messy emotional entanglements, no expectations beyond what's written in that contract." From the back office came the sound of her father's labored breathing, each wheeze a reminder that time was running out. Violet looked around her gallery one more time, at the paintings that represented her dreams, at the space that had given her purpose. Then she looked at Marcus Blackwood, this stranger who held her future in his hands. "When do you need an answer?" "Now," Marcus said simply. "The merger conference begins Monday. If you're going to be my wife, Miss Chen, we have a wedding to plan." The gilded cage, the Blackwood mansion, rose from the hillside like something from a dream or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Violet pressed her face to the limousine window, watching manicured gardens and marble fountains blur past. 3 days had passed since she'd signed Marcus's contract. 3 days since her world had turned upside down. Her father was already receiving treatment at the city's most exclusive medical facility, and the relief in his eyes had made every signature worth it. Overwhelming, isn't it? The voice belonged to Helena Blackwood, Marcus's sister, who had appeared at Violet's elbow like an elegant spectre. Where Marcus was all sharp angles and contained intensity, Helena possessed a fluid grace that made Violet feel clumsy by comparison. Her silver hair was swept into a perfect chignon, and her designer dress probably cost more than Violet's entire wardrobe. "It's beautiful," Violet managed, stepping out of the car onto gravel that crunched like diamonds beneath her worn boots. Helena's laugh was musical, but not unkind. "Beautiful, yes, but beauty can be its own prison, dear. Come, let me show you to your quarters. We have much work to do if you're going to survive Marcus's world." The mansion's interior was a study in controlled elegance, soaring ceilings, priceless artwork, furniture that belonged in museums. Violet's reflection looked small and out of place in the polished marble floors. Helena led her up a grand staircase to a suite of rooms that was larger than Violet's entire apartment. "This will be your sanctuary," Helena said, throwing open French doors to reveal a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. "Marcus has the east wing, you have the west. Public spaces for public appearances, private spaces for sanity. Helena, I need to ask you something." Violet turned from the window, gathering courage. "Why is your brother really doing this? The merger story feels incomplete." Helena's perfectly composed expression flickered for just a moment. "My dear brother has many secrets, most of them painful. But I will say this. Marcus has never brought a woman home before. Contract or not, you're the first person to breach his carefully constructed walls in years." That evening, Violet found herself standing in the marble foyer, wearing a borrowed gown that cost more than her car, waiting for Marcus to escort her to the Westfield Foundation charity gala. When he appeared at the top of the stairs, her breath caught despite herself. In his tuxedo, he looked like every fantasy prince she'd ever imagined, dangerous and magnetic. Cracks in the facade. 2 months into their arrangement, Violet had grown accustomed to the rhythm of their strange life. Mornings in her art studio, a converted conservatory that Marcus had surprised her with, complete with north-facing windows and professional lighting. Afternoons visiting her father, whose color had returned thanks to cutting-edge treatments. Evenings playing the devoted wife at various social functions, learning to navigate conversations about charity boards and investment portfolios. She was mixing paints when Helena burst into the studio. Her usual composure cracked. "She's back," Helena announced without preamble. "Who's back?" Violet set down her palette, alarmed by the panic in Helena's voice. "Diana Westfield, Marcus's former fiancée. She's returned from Paris, and she's already making inquiries about your marriage." Helena began pacing, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors. Diana doesn't give up easily on things she considers hers. Violet's stomach clenched. Marcus had never mentioned a previous engagement, though given their business arrangement, she supposed his romantic history wasn't her concern. Still, the omission stung more than it should have. What does she want? Marcus, obviously. She broke their engagement 2 years ago to pursue some French aristocrat, but apparently that didn't work out. Helena stopped pacing to fix Violet with an intense stare. "Diana comes from old money, the kind of woman Marcus's world expects him to marry. If she's determined to win him back—" The conversation was interrupted by the sound of raised voices. From the main hall, Violet and Helena exchanged glances before hurrying toward the commotion. They found Marcus facing a woman who could have stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. Tall, blonde, with the kind of effortless elegance that money and breeding provided. "Darling, you can't seriously expect me to believe this charade." "Is real," Diana was saying, her cultured voice carrying easily through the space. "A marriage to some unknown artist. It's so unlike you." Diana. Marcus's voice was carefully controlled, but Violet could see tension in the set of his shoulders. "You have no right to be here." Diana laughed, the sound like silver bells with an edge of steel. "I have every right. We were engaged, Marcus. We have history." Her gaze shifted to Violet, taking in her paint-stained apron and casual clothes with obvious dismissal. "Surely you don't expect me to believe you've fallen in love with this?" Something hot and fierce ignited in Violet's chest. She stepped forward, surprising herself with her boldness. Actually, he has. The lie came easily, fueled by indignation. "And I've fallen in love with him." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Diana's perfect composure cracked slightly, while Marcus went very still beside her. When Violet looked up at him, she found him staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. "How quaint," Diana recovered, her smile sharp. "Well, I suppose time will tell how long this little infatuation lasts. Marcus, when you tire of playing house, you know where to find me." After Diana's dramatic exit, the hall fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock. Helena cleared her throat awkwardly and disappeared, leaving Violet alone with Marcus. "You didn't have to do that," Marcus said finally. "Yes, I did." Violet crossed her arms, still burning with righteous anger. "She was being cruel, and I won't stand for it." Marcus studied her face for a long moment, something shifting in his dark eyes. "You defended me." "Of course I did. We may have a contract marriage, but I'm still your wife. That means something to me, even if it doesn't to you." Without warning, Marcus stepped closer, his hand reaching up to cup her cheek. "It means more to me than you know," he said quietly. For a heartbeat, Violet thought he might kiss her. The air between them crackled with tension, with possibilities that had nothing to do with contracts or business arrangements. Then Marcus's phone rang, shattering the moment. He stepped back, the wall between them rebuilding itself brick by brick. "I have to take this," he said, already turning away. "It's about the merger." As Violet watched him retreat to his office, she pressed her fingers to her cheek where his touch still lingered. Somewhere in the past 2 months, the lines had begun to blur. What had started as a business arrangement was becoming something else entirely, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. But Diana's return had reminded her of an uncomfortable truth. Marcus Blackwood belonged to a world where love was a luxury and marriage was strategy. No matter how real her growing feelings felt, she was still just playing a role. The question was whether Marcus was playing one too, or if the moments of tenderness she glimpsed were as genuine as they seemed. Part 4. The Truth Unveiled. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning when Grace Martinez appeared at the gallery's front door. Violet recognized the sharp-eyed journalist from her byline in the financial section, though seeing her in person was somehow more intimidating. Grace's smile was professional but predatory, like a cat who'd cornered a particularly interesting mouse. "Mrs. Blackwood, I was hoping we could chat about your fairy tale romance." Grace settled into the chair across from Violet's desk without invitation, pulling out a tablet and stylus. "Our readers are fascinated by your husband's sudden transformation from confirmed bachelor to devoted husband." Violet's hands stilled on the inventory she'd been updating. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Come now, we're both intelligent women." Grace leaned forward conspiratorially. "Marcus Blackwood announces his engagement to a complete unknown 3 weeks after meeting her. Either it's the most romantic whirlwind courtship in history, or there's something else entirely going on here." The gallery door chimed again, and Violet's relief was short-lived when she saw who entered. Robert Blackwood commanded attention the way his son did, but where Marcus's presence was controlled intensity, Robert's was pure theatrical dominance. Silver-haired and distinguished, he wore his wealth like armor and his displeasure like a weapon. "Miss Martinez," Robert nodded to the journalist with cool acknowledgement. "Still writing fiction and calling it news, I see." Grace's eyes lit up like a child on Christmas morning. "Mr. Blackwood, what perfect timing. I was just asking your daughter-in-law about the rather suspicious circumstances of her marriage." "Suspicious is an interesting word choice," Robert replied, his gaze shifting to Violet with calculating assessment, though not inaccurate. Violet stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I think you both should leave." "Should we?" Robert's smile was sharp as a blade. "Even when I have information about my son that might interest you? About why he really needed this marriage so desperately?" Despite herself, Violet found herself sitting back down. Grace's stylus moved rapidly across her tablet, recording every word. "You see, my dear," Robert continued, clearly enjoying himself, "Marcus has never told you about London, has he? About the accident that destroyed his first company and killed 3 people. The words hit Violet like physical blows. She thought of Marcus's nightmares, the ones that made him cry out in his sleep when he thought no one could hear. The way he sometimes stared into space with haunted eyes, lost in memories he never shared. He was developing autonomous vehicle software, Robert continued relentlessly. The beta test went wrong. A family of 3 died when the system failed. Marcus was cleared of legal responsibility, but the guilt, it nearly destroyed him. Grace was writing furiously now, her eyes bright with the scent of a story. "And this marriage helps him how?" "Rehabilitation of image," Robert replied. "A stable marriage suggests emotional stability. His board needed reassurance before approving the merger with Chen Technologies. Ironic, isn't it, that he chose someone with that particular surname?" The room spun around Violet as the pieces clicked into place. Chen Technologies, her father's former company, the one he'd sold years ago to pay for her mother's cancer treatments. The company Marcus was. Love's true contract. 3 weeks passed in a blur of guilty silence and sleepless nights. Violet threw herself into her art with desperate intensity, creating pieces that bled with raw emotion, anger, betrayal, and underneath it all, a love she couldn't quite kill despite everything she'd learned. Her friend Nina Chen visited daily, bringing coffee and unwavering support, though her dark eyes held worry that no amount of cheerful chatter could hide. "You look terrible," Nina announced on Thursday morning, setting down a steaming cup and surveying Violet's latest painting, a storm-tossed seascape that seemed to capture every turbulent feeling in her heart. "Thank you for the honesty," Violet replied dryly, wiping paint from her hands. "I'm serious, Vi. You're killing yourself over this." Nina perched on the paint-splattered stool beside the easel. "Maybe you should talk to him. What's there to say? Everything was a lie from the beginning." Violet dipped her brush in grey paint, adding another layer of clouds to the angry sky. "He used me, Nina. My family's tragedy, my father's illness, my desperation. It was all just convenient leverage." But was it? Nina's voice was gentle but persistent. "Because Oliver Reed called me yesterday." Violet's brush stilled. Oliver was Marcus's personal assistant, a quiet man with kind eyes who'd always treated her with genuine warmth during her time at the mansion. Oliver said Marcus hasn't slept in weeks, hasn't eaten properly. He's been calling hospitals, checking on your father's treatment, making sure the bills are still being paid, even though you broke the contract. Nina reached over to still Violet's trembling hand. "That doesn't sound like a man who was just using you." Before Violet could respond, the gallery door chimed. She looked up to find Marcus standing in the doorway, looking haggard and desperate in a way that made her heart clench despite everything. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, wrinkled, shirt day-old stubble, eyes red with exhaustion. "I've been trying to find the courage to come here for weeks," he said without preamble, his voice rough with emotion. Nina squeezed Violet's shoulder and quietly disappeared into the back office, leaving them alone with the weight of unspoken words. "You look awful," Violet said, echoing Nina's earlier observation. Marcus's laugh was broken. "I feel worse." He moved closer, stopping just out of reach. "Violet, I need you to know that everything my father told you was true. I did choose you because of your connection to Chen Technologies. I did need the marriage for the merger, and yes, I've been carrying guilt about London for 3 years." Each confession hit like a physical blow, but Violet forced herself to listen. "But what he didn't tell you," Marcus continued, "what I should have told you from the beginning, is that somewhere along the way, it stopped being about any of that. Somewhere between your fierce defense of me at the gala and the way you painted sunlight into my dark house, I fell in love with you." Violet's breath caught. "Marcus, I'm not finished." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the pain etched in every line of his face. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I manipulated you, used your desperation against you, but I need you to know that what I felt, what I feel, for you, is real. The only real thing in my carefully constructed life." "How can I believe that?" Violet whispered, tears blurring her vision. "How can I trust anything you say when everything was built on lies?" Marcus reached into his jacket and withdrew a familiar envelope, thick with legal documents. "Because I'm tearing up the contract. Your father's medical care will continue indefinitely with no strings attached. The gallery lease stands regardless of what you decide about us. You owe me nothing, Violet. You never did." He set the envelope on her work table and stepped back. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for another chance. I just needed you to know that loving you is the most honest thing I've ever done." Violet stared at the contract, then at the man who'd turned her world upside down. In the harsh gallery lighting, she could see every line of exhaustion on his face, every shadow of regret in his eyes. This wasn't the composed billionaire who'd first walked into her gallery. This was a man stripped bare, offering his heart with no guarantee of return. "The merger," she said quietly, "failed. The board withdrew support when news of our separation leaked. James Porter made sure of that." Marcus's smile was bitter. "Turns out some gambles don't pay off. So you lost everything." "No," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. "I lost the merger. I lost the company's trust. But I didn't lose everything. I found something worth more than all of it combined." Violet looked down at the contract, then at the paintings surrounding them. All the emotions she'd poured onto canvas over the months of their strange marriage. Love, fear, hope, betrayal, and underneath it all, a connection that had felt real even when everything else was pretense. "Nina's right," she said finally. "I do look terrible." Marcus blinked, clearly thrown by the non sequitur. "And you look worse." Violet stepped closer, close enough to touch the stubble on his jaw. "We're both disasters." "Violet, I'm still angry with you," she said, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his cheekbone. "I'm hurt and confused, and I don't know if I can trust you again." "I understand." Marcus leaned into her touch like a man dying of thirst. "But I love you too," she whispered. "Despite everything, against all logic, I love you. And maybe that's enough to start over, really start over with truth this time." When Marcus kissed her, it was nothing like the careful performances they'd given at social events. This was desperate and real, tasting of tears and hope and the promise of something genuine. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "No contracts this time," he murmured. "No contracts," Violet agreed. "Just us, figuring it out as we go." "I can live with that uncertainty." "Good." Violet smiled, the first real smile she'd managed in weeks. "Because love doesn't come with guarantees, Marcus Blackwood. It just comes with possibility." Outside, storm clouds were gathering, but inside the gallery, surrounded by paintings that told the story of their complicated love, Marcus and Violet began writing a new chapter, one built on truth, forgiveness, and the radical act of choosing each other every day. Some contracts, they discovered, were written not in legal language, but in shared glances, gentle touches, and the simple decision to stay when leaving would be easier. Those were the only contracts that really mattered.